We bought a $600 semi-working 1981 Donkey Kong arcade game off CraigsList because when you want to acquire retro technology while being vaguely afraid for your personal safety, CraigsList is still the undefeated champion. The seller was a guy in Richmond, Texas, who definitely had the energy of someone who says, "Oh yeah, it works great, mostly." Cosmetically, the machine looked like it had just finished losing a fight behind a bowling alley, but structurally, surprisingly solid. And in a weird turn of events, we also found a bunch of loose pennies and an entire quarter inside the cabinet. So technically, it only cost us $599 in change. That's what we call a completely rational use of disposable income. Now that the video vendor has been exorcised from the garage, Donkey Kong gets to move in, and we're starting where every responsible restoration begins, taking off everything that isn't bolted directly into the Earth's crust. First up, the T-molding, that beautiful thin plastic strip that lines the edges of Nintendo cabinets and turns an arcade game into something that looks vaguely like furniture your parents wouldn't let you sit on. Nintendo's T-molding, by the way, gets brittle and yellows over time like old teeth. Luckily, we came prepared. We've got a giant roll of replacement T-molding inside the house, like we're Costco for weirdos. Next, we unlatch the control panel and unhook it from the game harness, which sounds much fancier than it is. The buttons were missing parts, and the joystick looked like it had survived a mission to Mars and came back emotionally unavailable. Then it's on to the bezel, the piece of glass that sits in front of the monitor and is held in by what I can only describe as a sliding metal girder thing, like Nintendo hired a small team of medieval bridge engineers to design it. The bezel itself was mostly fine, except for the series of deeply unfortunate words that had been lovingly carved into it back in 1982 by what I assume was a roving gang of coked-up yuppies trying to impress each other at the arcade. Now the marquee. Oh, the marquee. This thing had more cracks in it than John DeLorean's personal finances. We unscrewed the rusty brackets holding it in place, and because we have 200 spare Williams security screws in a box, don't ask, we're going to use them whether it makes sense or not. Of course, the old screws didn't exactly want to leave. They were rusted in like they had squatters' rights. That's when we brought out our trusty vamp pliers, which, as we've mentioned before, are like regular pliers, except they bite down like a flying bat. With anger issues, we eventually wrestle the old screws out of their tiny rusty tombs. With the screws safely gathered into a Ziploc bag, which I chose personally because I have control issues, we turned our attention to the dreaded coin door. This involved removing the test game button and the counter mechanism, neither of which were excited to participate. Eventually I convinced them to come along, and we began the battle with the bolts holding the coin door frame. And of course the two bolts at the bottom, totally blocked by the coin box. Because why not? This, my friends, is what we in the arcade restoration business refer to as a PITA. And no, we are not talking about bread. We're talking about a pain in the ass that was clearly designed by someone who hated future repairmen and wanted to make sure they suffered greatly. And it worked! Okay, this task is getting super boring. Let's look up some nuts and bolts jokes, shall we? My job is to drill holes in things and then bolt them together. At first, it's boring, but later on, it's riveting. How did the engineering student turn a screw into a bolt? He took the screw, heated it to 700 degrees, dipped it in liquid nitrogen, recited the engineering code of ethics backwards, and then, boom! Bolt! What's a bolt's favorite sauce? Ranch dressing. What kind of nut should you avoid pairing with a bolt? A donut. Where can you acquire interesting facts about nuts? The internet! The coin door is finally free, and you, dear viewer, are finally free from my dad jokes. For now, they will return. They always return. Now, as for freeing this machine from its collection of random bumper stickers and weird advertising decisions, we're ditching all of it. Gone. Banished. Except for the vintage tacks stickers from the 1980s. Those get to stay because they're historic. They belong here. They're like little adhesive fossils from the Reagan administration. The rest? Meh. Goodbye. Now, let's talk about the original artwork. Do I appreciate patina? Of course I do. I love a little vintage wear. But I also appreciate a full-body cardio workout when I'm prying off a 3-foot sticker that has been clinging to this cabinet since Three's Company was still airing new episodes. This thing hasn't seen daylight or its own backside since Jack Tripper was falling over furniture on national television. 80s television references aside, which, by the way, is hard for me because I love them, our progress on removing the artwork from this Donkey Kong cabinet has slowed to the speed of a man trying to explain Bitcoin to his grandmother. And if you haven't tried that before, I highly recommend it not. Now, you're lucky, and I mean statistically lucky, because the other side of the cabinet barely had any artwork at all. It was like Nintendo just gave up halfway through. So that's why you get to sit back and watch this side, which has somehow been clinging to this cabinet for 40 years like it's a bear cub on a power line, get peeled away in a bizarre mix of satisfying and deeply upsetting time-lapse footage. At this point, I've completely given up on using anything resembling technique or dignity, so naturally it's time to break out the chemicals, specifically citrus strip, which sounds like it should be a refreshing summer cocktail, but no, it's actually a substance designed to melt stickers off the face of the earth. That's its entire job. It should really be called Citrus Doom, but the marketing department said, let's make it sound zesty and fun. Now, my move here is to apply a very thin layer using a paper towel. Barehanded, because I like to start my restoration projects with the exact same logic as a man who says, I don't need the instructions. And then about 45 seconds later, I remember, oh right, I hate it when my skin starts melting, like I'm in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I throw on some gloves because safety and immediately apply a much thicker coat, as if doubling down on the bad decision will somehow fix it. Eventually, after some unholy bubbling, we manage to strip everything off. We sand down the cabinet, patch the extra monitor holes with a combination of Bondo and blind optimism, and pretend like this was the plan all along. Did we film that part? No, we did not. Congratulations, you're off the hook, but we have a lot more things to do. Like, take the old coin door out to pasture. Kidding! In reality, we sent off the old coin door for powder coating because if you're going to obsessively restore a 40-year-old arcade machine, you might as well go full diva about it. But in the meantime, since we just happen to have a brand new coin door sitting around, because that's the kind of stuff I own now, we slapped that on along with some shiny new coin mechs to replace the completely mismatched circus we had before. And you know what? Life is good. They work, just like any other coin mech. You put a quarter in, and the machine says, yes, I will allow this transaction. Now, I believe these are set for United States quarters. Pretty sure. I say pretty sure because I have no idea what would happen if you tried to put in a Canadian quarter or a Chuck E. Cheese token. I assume the machine would either reject it or open a portal to another dimension where all my unfinished projects live. Onward we go to paint the cabinet, because why stop making questionable choices now? Some people with strong opinions and probably a podcast recommend using sky blue laminate for these Nintendo cabinets, and that's fine, that's adorable. But I found that if you use oil-based paint with a super flat roller, you can recreate the original Nintendo finish pretty accurately, or at least convincingly enough that strangers won't yell at you on the internet. Now, the trick here is preventing your paint from starting to resemble an orange peel, which is apparently what happens when the paint gets bored and starts developing a skin condition mid-application. So we slap on 2 coats, sometimes more, because the goal here is not subtlety. The goal is shiny, smooth, aggressively restored Donkey Kong glory. We're also very careful to avoid painting over the 1983 tax stickers, because those are historical artifacts now. You can't buy that kind of authenticity. You can, however, accidentally paint over it and then scream into a towel. So we're cautious. Then we finish it off with some semi-gloss black around the interior sides and the base to fully complete the illusion that it's still 1981, and somehow this arcade machine has time traveled directly to my garage in a DeLorean pulling a trailer. Because if you're restoring a Nintendo cabinet and not imagining time travel scenarios, are you even doing it right? Our new artwork, marquee, and control panels are standing by ready to go the moment the paint actually dries, which at this point feels like waiting for Godot, but with more fumes. Now we turn our attention to the metal hardware, which has not aged gracefully. First up, these marquee brackets, which have become aggressively rusty over the years. Like, do you even want to live? Rusty. So we sand them down to bare metal, exposing the raw, shameful skeleton underneath. And then, because we are professionals, we hit them with our trusty collection of Rust-Oleum black spray paint. Yes, I own a collection. This is who I am now. For this particular moment of unnecessary specificity, we've gone with satin black because if you're going to be obsessive, you might as well commit. That just leaves the internal monitor brackets, control panel latches, and roughly 10 million screws that we've been tossing into our tumbler like we're cleaning cursed pirate treasure. We load up the tumbler, lock it down like it's carrying plutonium, and fire it up inside walnut shell media, because apparently that's a thing. You can buy it, you can own it, you can watch it swirl around like you're running a tiny, extremely boring cement factory. It's good for 10 to 15 runs or until you begin questioning every life decision that led you here. Now we wait. Let the paint cure. Let the tumbler tumble, and when we come back, we'll slap it all together and then tackle the monitor, because nothing says fun like mixing high voltage and fragile glass while pretending you're calm. And hey, if you enjoyed this, please drop us a like. And if you really enjoyed it, there's more of this deeply specific nonsense where that came from. So feel free to subscribe. Woot!